All right, to start this off, I just wanted to say real quick that I am going to be working on a Glycol chiller. It's like a mini chiller or a power pack unit. And essentially, because I know I'm going to get a million questions about this, essentially, you have a beer walk-in and we have remote kegs in the bar. So the kegs are stored in the beer walk-in and we have beer lines running underground or in the ceiling. Usually they go underground. And the problem is that those beer lines can get warm in between the 36-degree beer walk-in and the beer tap where they're supposed to be pouring 40-ish degree beer coming out of the handles, okay? So what we have is we have a little chiller or a Glycol unit or a power pack unit. You can call it either one. And what it does is it circulates Glycol through some carbonator pumps with a motor attached to it. And it circulates that really cold Glycol. We usually run it at about 28 degrees-ish, okay? So essentially it has a propylene glycol in there mixed with water so we can get the right freeze point. That glycol is pumped around the beer lines as they're running underground. So it maintains the beer temperature. The glycol does not mix with the beer. It's at its own polypropylene line, I think. I think it's polypropylene. Anyways, it's in its own line that's wrapped around and then insulated really well. And that line just goes around and then there's a return line that comes back, okay? So that's the unit that I'm working on. We'll get on with the video now. This video is brought to you by Sporlan. Quality, integrity, and tradition. All right, today our call is on a Glycol unit, but the problem is when I talked to the manager last night, he said one of them was down, but he shut them both down, which sucks because that means I got to figure out which one was down now. It's interesting. But he said one was temping, one wasn't. So we're going to turn them back on. Looks like he shut these off. And we'll go through them and see what we can figure out. You may recognize these units because maybe a year ago I did a video where I changed this suction service valve because it was leaking, if I remember right, put on a dryer. Still don't know which unit is the problem. This is the left and the right. The right seems to be coming down to temp a little bit faster. All of the pumps, by putting my hands on them, they're nice and warm. They feel like they're moving fluid, but that doesn't mean anything as of yet. This really does kind of make it difficult because now I got to wait to see which unit was the problem. But we're going to watch it for a bit and see what happens. What I did very quickly, don't want to do this for too long, but I went ahead and turned off all the pumps on each unit, okay? I'm thinking that my problem might be with the left unit because I've been here for 15 minutes and it has not dropped below 67 with the pumps running. But my right unit, it's dropped maybe like a degree or something if I remember right. But I shut off the pumps to both of them. And I want to see if we drop in temp on either unit, so that way I don't want to clean condensers or anything yet because I want to see the problem. So we're going to let them run for a few more minutes with just the condensing unit running and we'll see if we get any drops in temp. So like I said, you have to be careful. Both units started flooding back to the compressor because they're automatic expansion valves. This one still hasn't dropped in temperature. This one started flooding back too. This one dropped a little, but I'm still not completely convinced on which unit is the problem. And I really don't want to apply service gauges with 11 ounces of refrigerant until I absolutely need to. So we're going to start amping out pump motors and going through that. So my confidence that it is this left unit is getting higher and higher because we are now going on about 25 minutes and it has not dropped in temperature at all. Vital signs without putting my service gauges, we've got a cold suction coming back. We've got a hot discharge. And we're just not dropping in temp. And then also looking at each one of the pumps, the actual pump that's connected to the motor, each one is sweating, which is a good sign. The next thing that I did was looked at the pump motors and looked at the max current draw, or the RLA, and I believe it was 2.3 amps. So I've isolated all the wires for each pump. It's kind of a really tight situation up here. But, and we're just gonna amp them out to see what we're getting. 1.74, 1.68, 1.86. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there, but we've got current draw on all of them. This is interesting. This is a predicament, and I'm getting closer and closer to having to put service gauges on this, but I'm doing everything I can to make sure you know, I don't put them on for no reason. The next thing I'm gonna do is check the actual glycol temperature and see if the temperature sensor is reading accurate. I'm not gonna pull the temp sensor as of yet and ohm it out. I'm just gonna check the glycol temperature. Well, that's certainly interesting. So I wrapped my temperature sensor right around the Glycol controller sensor. And we got a little bit of a discrepancy there. I'm reading 37, Glycol's reading 69, which kind of adds to the story, because yesterday when the manager called me, he said he just noticed that this was saying high temperatures, but he said his beer temps weren't high yet. So yeah, okay, well, we're gonna investigate that a little bit further. So I'm pretty confident in my failed temperature sensor diagnosis on this guy. Do not have a temp sensor. Don't think that my local suppliers have a temp sensor, but they do have an entire control package. So I'm gonna go ahead and head there. I'll question them. I know they have the controller. It's a Glycol XR60. It's a universal 230 volt controller. So I'll go ahead and pick that up, and then while I'm there, I'll have them look for a temp sensor, because if I can get away with a temp sensor, I'll do it, but if not, we'll just change the whole control. Now, yes, I certainly could order a temp sensor, but it's a matter of the unit freezing up. In this situation, if we let it run past about 27 degrees, we're gonna start to freeze up the beer lines, and that creates a problem. Yeah, the customer could turn it on and off every night, but I mean, I could put a control in here and just be done with it. So we'll see what I can get my hands on. That also gives me the opportunity for this one to watch it completely come down to temp and satisfy. Now, another thing that I'll tell you, when I shut off the pumps and I watched them start to flood back to the compressor, I noticed that this one right here flooded back a lot harder and a lot more. There was an ice pattern on the compressor that was huge. This one right here had a very small ice pattern. And I tend to notice that this one's suction line is not getting as cold. Now, I have not put service gauges on here, and we certainly will do that, because I'm kind of wondering if this one might have low charge. This one right here, I made a repair on this about a year-ish ago and weighed in the factory charge. So I'm pretty confident this one is charged correctly, and I'm the only person to work on this location. So I use some vital signs that's gonna, you know, give me an idea, and I might put service gauges on this, but we'll see when I get back. So I'm gonna go pick up the parts. So some further investigation, I realized something, and I don't know how easy it is for you to see. That's my temperature sensor right down there, right where my finger's at, okay? And it comes into here too, right there. And I was doing some investigating, and I realized that the sensing probe, the metal part of the probe, is 4 inches long. So that's not a standard Glycol temperature sensor. So I am gonna have to order the factory OEM part. So we're gonna have to do something temporarily. This Glycol controller right here is wired to where the compressor is completely separate and they're running to a contactor. I do got to give Perlick some credit, because other manufacturers don't do this. All the pumps are running off of relays, and the compressor is running off of a contactor, so that way they're not overloading the controls or the switches. Other manufacturers just put the full load on the switches, and the switches burn out over time. Anyways, I'm going to throw in a temporary temperature controller to get them operating, so that way I can order the proper part. Now, ideally, you know, what I'm going to have to do is going to kind of hack it up, but I'll make it as safe as possible. It's only going to be for a day, because I'll have the part next day aired, and I'll have it tomorrow afternoon. Okay, so temporarily what I did was I grabbed the 2 wires from the compressor right here. These 2 ones that were here went right into male connectors. That way they're nice and safe. Grounded it out. Ran the sensing bulb down into here temporarily in the return. That's the return. And then we're just going to set the control up here, over out of the way. We've got some extra cord, which is fine. And again, this is a major temporary repair, and then we'll order the part. So I'm going to power it up, and then we'll check everything out. All right, we just shut off, and it's at about 30 degrees. We're going to go, I turned it just a hair colder, because we want to maintain usually about 28 degrees in these things. So pumps are still running, controls working, and that's how it is. So I'm going to go ahead and put my probes on this guy, and we are going to check it real quick, and then we'll compare these numbers, because this unit pulls down really fast. We'll compare these numbers to that guy that's taking a little bit longer. So that guy's still at 34. It's pulling down, but I have a feeling it's just a hair low on refrigerant. People tend to put gauges on these things, like, you know, I have service techs and stuff, and when I said earlier that I'm the only person, I mean my company's the only person, so we got to make sure that we're not low on charge. I don't see any places where it could be leaking. There's really not much to these units. All right, I'm using the field piece probes, and you know, really important when you're working on a system that has such a critical charge. This unit takes, where's it at? Refrigerant, 11 ounces of refrigerant. You know, normal service gauges, they aren't gonna fly, okay? These probes are great because I can put them on there and I don't lose too much of the refrigerant charge. It's awesome. And it's even better that there's no Schrader because I can just valve it off and then you have minimal loss. You don't have that spray back that you get sometimes with Schraders. Right now we're looking pretty good. We were running about 153, 154 head, 155, somewhere in there. And I pulled the filter off. The filter was dirty. For the ambient that we're dealing with right now, this is not bad. It's about 75 degrees in this kitchen. We have a mini split dedicated just to these glycol units. It's very dirty though. Look at, there's like mold and crap. That thing needs to be cleaned for sure. But so this gives us a baseline of where we're working with, and I know that this unit is working. It's currently at 30 degrees and the high temperature was 32 before I turned back on. So I'm just logging the temperature so I can see the cut in and cut out. But really cool, you know, wanted to point out the field piece probes because, you know, you have minimal refrigerant loss and they work great in situations that you have minimal refrigerant charge. Very, very low loss on those things. But yeah, we're looking good. Everything else is to be expected. This unit, you treat it like it's a fixed orifice metering device because it's an automatic expansion valve. So it's really no change. It's, you know, the difference between I don't even know why they have an automatic expansion valve. I mean, I guess, no, okay, I should take that back. The reason why they have an automatic expansion valve is because typically you can adjust them for your superheat and make changes to the system and dial it in versus just a capillary tube. On a capillary tube, you'd have to add refrigerant, I guess. So who knows, but anyways, we're looking good. We have some numbers to compare this other unit to now. So the other unit is coming down, but it is literally taking a very long time. It's at 33 degrees right now. So I will also verify that the other sensor is working correctly on this unit before we order just the one too. It's already valved off this valve, and just to show you the amount of loss that you get from this. Barely anything. I mean, it's equivalent to taking a Schrader off when the depressor is working correctly. Looks like I need to change my gasket, but it's very minimal loss, so really like the probes for that reason. You don't have, you know, a bunch of hoses or anything for refrigerant to get stuck into. All right, we are gauged up. This guy's actually running very similar. The head pressure is definitely higher. Let's go ahead and pull this filter off and see what happens. Filter's a little bit dirty. Condenser's clean. It's completely clean, not just on the surface. I can see right through it. So let's let this guy drop in temp and see what happens. Another possibility is that they could be working fine, and this unit right here, now remember, the manager called me yesterday to tell me that one of his glycol units was reading high temperatures. He said he saw like 55 degrees, which is about what it's at right now. He said though, he just noticed it when he was walking by. He wasn't having foamy beer problems or anything. So with that being said, this unit may have been freezing up the glycol lines, because when I got here in the morning, he had both units shut down. And he told me he was not having temperature issues. So it's a very good possibility that this unit actually was freezing the beer lines, which in theory could have still been cold, basically. So when I turned it on, that could be why it came down to temperature so fast, because the glycol lines could have been frozen last night. Which these units do usually take a long time to come down to temperature. So we're still, I mean, we're not bad. Not bad at all. I'm not really going to make too many changes. We're just going to watch it for a little bit. So I'm not adding gas for this. This does not look bad to me at all. we're looking good. 32 degrees, 32 degrees, so the sensor's doing good. So we're gonna leave this one be. We're gonna order that sensor and we'll return and they'll be fine temporarily. All right, we are back today. We're gonna change this sensor hopefully, and that fixes the problem. I also brought a universal 208 volt Glycol controller just in case the sensor doesn't fix it. So we're gonna get this thing all taken apart. It's been running great with the temporary temperature controller the entire time, but I wanna put it back to the factory one. And the one next to it is running perfectly good. So let's get going on it. All right, so there's the new sensor. And the old one, I don't know if you guys can see that down there. It looks like this nut, there's a nut right there. It looks like if I loosen that, I should be able to slide the sensor out, but I expect that glycol is gonna pour out of there too. So I put a towel down and I'll try to do a hot swap really quick because I don't want to drain the glycol out of this thing if I don't have to. So I know it's hard, but right back in there, what I'm gonna do is get a crescent wrench on here. Like that. And I'm hoping that when I twist that, I'll be able to slide the sensor out and push the new one in real quick. That's the hope without making a giant mess. Man, I went to go pull that damn sensor out and there's a compression ferrule on it. And it's not 1/4 inch, it's like 5/16, which I'm not gonna have. I have 3/8 and I have 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch won't fit and 3/8 is too big. Man, that pisses me off. They're gonna get, it's just gonna be ran over the top like the other sensor was temporarily, but this is gonna be permanent. I'll just put some insulation tape down. That irritates the heck out of me. These guys can't send the ferrule that you need. So basically, it works just like a compression fitting for like a water line. When you tighten it down, the ferrule gets stuck and then it pinches on it and creates the watertight seal on this guy. So from the looks of it, I loosened it and it started to leak, and I tried to move the ferrule and it wouldn't move, so it's really compressed onto that line. So I don't think I'm gonna get it off. You know what? I was kind of able to shove a 1/4 inch ferrule on there. Maybe I can get it in. All right, I take back the bad stuff I said about them. It is a 1/4 inch compression. Now the only bad side is this is stainless steel and brass. I don't think we're gonna get any kind of a corrosive thing going on because the other one was steel and steel, but it is what it is. I'm gonna try to put that 1/4 inch ferrule on there and see if we can't get it in. All right, it wasn't too bad. It was, you know, move some stuff out of the way, but it did have a brass ferrule on it, the original one. So I was able to pre-put that on and just shove it in. It's in there, it's going into there, and I've got it hooked into the control. So we're gonna push this back up here and then power this guy up and see if it solves our problem. Turn on this disconnect switch, hopefully nothing blows up. See what happens. Yep, 33 degrees. Bam. All right, so check this out. Because this was a pain to order, I went ahead and ordered 2 of them. They've got identical units. I know I'll leave it in this unit right here and it'll be ready just in case we ever have to change another one.
All right, that one wasn't too bad, right? My thought, when the manager called me the night before, he said he had 1 unit down, but he said his beers were not temping high, okay? He just said that 1 unit was reading really high and he didn't want to have beers start foaming, but he also didn't want to make an overtime call out of it, which was surprising because usually they want us to come out 911 for these units. Beer is one of their biggest profitable things there. But I ended up showing up the next morning and both units were off. So I was a little perplexed, right? So I'm thinking that because it had a bad sensor, the sensor was reading 80 degrees, the unit would never shut off. So my thought was eventually it actually froze the beer lines, which can happen. And then you'll get foamy beer or it'll start causing problems, no beer, whatever. So my thought was maybe they froze the beer lines and he just shut down both units. Again, I never figured out why both of them were shut off. But anyways, when I arrived, I had to wait for them to come down to temperature, which on those glycol units, they tend to take a long time to come down, which is just kind of a waiting game. But eventually we found the bad sensor. I went ahead and did a temporary repair, installed a temporary temperature controller just to get them by, okay? Versus them shutting it off, because if they would have been shutting it off every night, they would have called me every single day until I came back. So just threw in that temporary temperature controller. It ran perfectly for about a week. I ended up coming back about a week later and replaced the sensor, and everything was good. Both units have been working great. Customer was happy. So not too bad. I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch these videos. As usual, do me a favor, leave me some feedback down in the comments. That does help me out. I like to see what you guys have to say. If you think I did anything wrong, or I'm always looking for anything, criticism or compliments, whatever. It's all good. Keep in mind, live streams Monday evenings, 5 p.m. Pacific time, where I usually answer questions and talk about these videos. And then I also answer questions from the live chat. And hey, there's a way I've been saying this a lot lately, but a lot of people have been jumping on the bandwagon, and there's a way that you guys can help to support the channel. If you guys are considering any tools, and TrueTechTools.com is a great website. If you check out their prices and you like their prices, I have an offer code. My offer code is big picture, one word. If you use that offer code, you will save 8% on your order, and I get a small commission, so it helps us support the channel. So, that does help if you guys are interested in that, okay? Other than that, we will catch you guys on the next one, okay?